Trash belongs with trash. My father's voice, amplified by the high-end Bose speakers, didn't just vibrate through the ballroom, it sliced through my dignity. Standing in the center of the dance floor in a hand-stitched silk wedding dress, I watched him dangle the old, yellowed passbook my grandfather had just secretly pressed into my palm moments before. Richard didn't just mock the gift, he performed an execution. With a smirk that had graced a dozen Forbes covers, he dropped the book straight into a silver bucket of melting ice and spilled champagne. As the elite crowd of Newport erupted into a cacophony of cruel laughter, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I knelt. I plunged my hand into the freezing, filthy water, ruining thousands of dollars of lace to rescue those wet, crinkled pages. As I walked out of my own wedding, dripping and discarded, the laughter followed me like a ghost. But my father had made a fatal error. He mistook my silence for weakness. He thought he had thrown away a piece of trash. He didn't realize he had just handed me the deed to his own destruction. 3 days later, the air was different. The salt spray of Newport had been replaced by the heavy, silent atmosphere of First National Bank in downtown Boston. The lobby was a cathedral of marble and hushed whispers, a world away from the champagne-soaked humiliation of the ballroom. I stood there in my thrift wool coat, my hair pulled back into the practical knot of a trauma nurse, clutching a Ziploc bag containing the ruined passbook. The pages were warped, smelling faintly of expensive Moet and cheap arrogance. I am Alyssa. For 29 years, I have been a ghost in my own family. My job as a trauma nurse has taught me how to be invisible, how to fade into the sterile white background while surgeons shout and families wail. I am the one who catches the blood. I am the one who holds the secrets. But as I slid that bag across the polished mahogany counter, I felt a tremor in my chest that no medical training could soothe. I need to check the balance on this account, I said. My voice was steady, the clinical tone I used when calling a time of death. It was a gift from my grandfather. The teller, a young girl with perfect nails and a look of mild boredom, picked up the bag with 2 fingers, her lip curling. She typed the account number into her terminal, likely expecting a balance of 0 or a closed account error. Then, the world stopped. Her fingers froze over the keys. She blinked, squinting at the screen, and then she looked at me. The color didn't just leave her face, it vanished, leaving her as pale as the patients I saw in the ICU. She whispered, her voice cracking. Please, do not leave this counter. I need to get my manager. Immediately. She didn't press a silent alarm, but the energy in the room shifted instantly. Within 90 seconds, the branch manager and a man in a bespoke charcoal suit, the regional director, were practically sprinting toward me. They didn't see the thrift coat anymore. They looked at me with the kind of reverent terror usually reserved for royalty or gods. Miss Mercer, the director breathed, ushering me toward a heavy steel door in the back. Please, follow me. We have been waiting for this account to be claimed for nearly 40 years. They led me into a private vault room that smelled of dust, old paper, and the weight of history. As they went to retrieve the master file, I sat in the oversized leather chair and closed my eyes. Suddenly, the marble walls faded, and I was 12 years old again. I was kneeling on the hardwood floor of my father's study in the Newport mansion. Richard sat in his wingback chair, swirling a glass of 18-year-old scotch, watching me with a look of detached curiosity. He had accidentally tipped the glass over his mahogany desk, and the rule in the Mercer house was absolute. Girls clean, boys conquer. My brother, Hunter, sat on the velvet sofa nearby, laughing at a video game, his feet propped up on the very table I had polished that morning. You missed a spot, Alyssa, Richard had said softly. He never yelled. He preferred the surgical precision of a quiet insult. He liked to see the light go out in my eyes. It was his favorite form of theater. When Grandpa Samuel, the only man who ever saw me as human, tried to help me up, Richard's voice turned into a whip. Touch that rag, old man, and I'll have the papers signed for the state home before your next dose of heart meds. Stay in your lane. I scrubbed until my knuckles bled that day. I scrubbed because I believed I had no value outside of what I could endure. The heavy clank of the vault door brought me back to the present. The regional director placed a thick, leather-bound file on the table with trembling hands. Your grandfather didn't just open a savings account, Miss Mercer. In 1982, he established a Totten Trust. He was an early, silent investor in several tech startups, names you'd recognize: Apple, Microsoft, Cisco. He funneled every dividend, every stock split, and every cent of interest back into this portfolio, untouched, for 4 decades. He turned the document toward me. The numbers were typed in a stark, black font. Current trust value, $12,400,000. I stared at it. $12,400,000. The number was absolute. I thought about the champagne bucket. I thought about my father laughing into the microphone, calling this fortune trash. He had held $12 million in his hand and thrown it away because he was too arrogant to look inside the cover. Is there anyone else listed on this account? I asked. My voice was cold. Surgical. No, the director said. It was a private trust, specifically structured to bypass the Mercer Family Foundation. It is entirely yours. You are the sole trustee and beneficiary. I touched the warped, ruined pages of the passbook through the plastic bag. It wasn't just money. It was a weapon. And for the first time in my life, I knew exactly where to aim it. When I got home, my husband, Luke, was already waiting. He didn't look up from his laptop at the kitchen island, which was currently a fortress of printed spreadsheets and court filings. Luke isn't just a data analyst, he is a forensic architect of secrets. He finds the cracks in the foundation that everyone else tries to paint over. It's not an empire, Alyssa, Luke said, finally turning the screen toward me. His voice was flat. It's a house of cards held together by spit and ego. I looked at the monitor. I expected to see wealth. I expected to see the millions Richard bragged about at every charity gala. Instead, I saw a sea of red. He's insolvent, Luke said, tapping a redacted document. The Newport mansion? Foreclosure proceedings started 3 weeks ago. The family trust he claims to manage? It's empty. He's been moving the same $50,000 between 6 different shell accounts to make it look like he has liquidity for the banks. And here's the kicker. The IRS CID, Criminal Investigation Division, has been watching him for 18 months. He's being audited for 2 decades of tax evasion. The man who had thrown my inheritance into a bucket wasn't a titan. He was a drowning man, flailing in a sea of debt, looking for anyone to pull him down with him. He didn't just want money, he needed it to stay out of a federal penitentiary. My phone rang. The caller ID said, Richard Mercer. I put it on speaker. Luke stopped typing. Alyssa. My father's voice filled the room. There was no apology for the wedding. No mention of the champagne bucket. Just the brash, unearned confidence of a man who believed he still owned the sun. I've been thinking about that shack your grandfather left you. The cottage in the woods. What about it? I asked. I rested my hand on the table to steady the tremor. I'm going to do you a favor, he said. I've spoken to my real estate attorney. We can liquidate it quickly. I'll handle the sale, get you a fair market price, and invest the proceeds into the family business so you actually get a return. You're a nurse, honey. You don't know the first thing about property taxes or maintenance. I'm trying to save you from a headache. He wanted the cottage. It was the only tangible thing Samuel had left me besides the passbook. It was worth maybe $300,000. Peanuts to a billionaire, but a lifeline to a desperate fraudster who needed a few $100,000 to bribe a creditor or delay a filing. I'm not selling, Dad, I said. The line went silent. Then, the mask shattered. You listen to me, you ungrateful little brat, he snarled, his voice dropping an octave into something primal. That old man was mentally incompetent when he signed that deed. I have witnesses, paid witnesses, ready to testify that you manipulated a senile geriatric into signing over family assets. If you don't sign that transfer paperwork by Friday, I will sue you for elder abuse. I will drag you through probate court until you're bankrupt and homeless. Do you understand me? You are out of your depth. He wasn't protecting me. He was hunting for liquidity, any asset he could seize, sell, and funnel into the black hole of his debt. I understand perfectly, I said. Good. I'll have the papers sent over. The line clicked dead. I looked at Luke. He wasn't scared, he was smiling. It was a cold, sharp smile that matched the ice forming in my own veins. Richard thought he was bullying a helpless daughter. He didn't know he had just handed us the blueprint for the trap. I waited 24 hours before calling him back. Silence is a powerful amplifier of desperation. Luke and I spent that day not in panic, but in preparation. We didn't hire a lawyer to fight the sale of the cottage. Instead, we hired a graphic designer to create a very specific portfolio of investment documents. When I finally dialed Richard's number, I performed the role of my life. I didn't summon the woman who had walked out of the bank vault. I summoned the 12-year-old girl who was terrified of spilling scotch. "Dad," I whispered when he picked up. I let my voice tremble. I'm sorry about the other day. I was overwhelmed." "You should be sorry," he snapped, but the edge was duller. He was hooked. "It's not just the cottage," I said, pitching my voice to the perfect frequency of naive panic. "I went to the bank. The passbook, it wasn't empty. Dad, I think I'm in trouble." The line went dead silent. I could practically hear his pulse racing through the phone. "How much?" "The bank manager, he said it's $12 million, I choked out. But he started talking about capital gains taxes and federal audits. He said if I don't report it correctly, the IRS will take half of it and I could go to jail. I don't know how to hide it. I'm just a nurse, Dad. I can't handle this." It was the perfect bait. I handed him exactly what he believed about me, that I was weak, stupid, and incapable of handling power. And I handed him exactly what he needed, a massive injection of $12 million to plug the holes in his sinking ship. "Listen to me very carefully, Alyssa," he said. His voice transformed instantly from bully to savior. It was chilling. "Do not sign anything with the bank. Do not talk to any more lawyers. You bring that paperwork to me. I can shelter it under the Mercer Family Trust. We can classify it as a pre-existing asset. I can make the tax liability disappear. I'm doing this to protect you, sweetheart." "Protect me?" He wanted to swallow the inheritance whole. "Can we do it tonight?" I asked. "No," he said quickly. He needed time to prepare his fake transfer papers. "I have the Man of the Year charity gala on Saturday in Boston. It's perfect. Bring the documents to the VIP suite before the speeches. I'll announce the expansion of the family fund. It'll look legitimate. We'll fix everything then." He wanted the audience. He wanted the glory of announcing a $12 million windfall as his own business genius. "Okay," I said. "Thank you, Dad. Thank you for fixing this." "That's what fathers are for," he said. I hung up and looked at Luke. The fear vanished from my face instantly. "He took it," I said. Luke nodded, already hitting print on the documents we would actually present. They looked exactly like the standard transfer forms Richard would expect. Same font, same headers, same legal jargon. But the fine print wasn't a transfer of funds. It was an affidavit of historical management and sole liability. Richard thought he was reeling in a clueless daughter. He didn't realize he had just invited the executioner to his own party. The Man of the Year gala was held in the grand ballroom of the Fairmont Copley Plaza. Crystal chandeliers dripped light onto the shoulders of Boston's elite, senators, CEOs, and socialites. It was a room full of old money and the people who worshipped it. I arrived at 7:55 p.m. I wasn't wearing the beige, sensible clothes Richard preferred. I was wearing a structured red dress that cost more than my first car. I walked through the crowd, not around it. I saw my brother, Hunter, near the bar. He was laughing too loudly, already 3 drinks deep, playing the role of the crown prince to a kingdom that was already in foreclosure. He didn't even recognize me. Richard was at the front of the room, flanked by 2 politicians. He looked radiant. It was the glow of a man who thought he had just pulled off the heist of the century. When he saw me approaching, his eyes narrowed, but his smile stayed plastered on for the cameras. He excused himself and led me toward the heavy curtains near the stage steps. "You're late," he hissed, his fingers digging into my arm as he pulled me into the shadows. "Do you have the folder?" "I have it, Dad." I held out the blue leather presentation folder. He snatched it from my hand. His greed was a physical force, vibrating off him. He opened it, his eyes scanning the signature lines. "Is it all there?" he asked. "The power of attorney? The trust merger?" "It's all there," I said. "It puts the entire $12 million under the control of the Mercer Family Trust. You just need to sign as the sole trustee to accept the assets and the historical responsibility for the funds." He didn't read the clauses. He didn't check the definitions. He just saw the dollar signs. A smart man would have asked why the document was titled Affidavit of Historical Management and Sole Liability. A smart man would have wondered why the dates listed went back 20 years, linking him retroactively to every shell company Luke had uncovered. But Richard wasn't smart, he was arrogant. He believed so fully in his own dominance that he couldn't conceive of a world where I was the threat. He pulled a Mont-Blanc pen from his pocket. "You did the right thing, Alyssa," he said, scribbling his signature with a flourish. He handed the folder back to me, dismissive, already turning his attention to the podium. "Go find a seat in the back. I have an announcement to make." He bounded up the stairs to the stage. The room quieted. The spotlight hit him, turning his white hair into a halo of fake virtue. I didn't retreat to the back. I moved to the side of the room, pulled out my phone, photographed the signature page, and hit send. 3 miles away, Luke received the image. He attached it to the whistleblower complaint we had finalized days earlier and uploaded it to the Department of Justice's secure portal. Moments later, Richard took the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced proudly, his voice booming through the ballroom. "Tonight, we launch a historic expansion of the Mercer Family Foundation. A $12 million investment in this city's future, a legacy of hard work and vision." He was confessing in real time. In front of 500 witnesses, he was claiming ownership of funds I had just tied to 2 decades of his own tax fraud and money laundering. He thought he was unveiling his legacy. He was actually reading his own Miranda rights. My phone buzzed, received. IRS confirmation code 99 Alpha. "It's done." Richard was still smiling when the 60-foot LED screen behind him flickered. The foundation logo vanished, replaced by a Department of Justice seal stamped with massive red letters, "Federal Asset Seizure in Progress. Case #8842M. The applause collapsed into a terrifying silence. Richard turned around, looking confused rather than afraid. His mind simply couldn't process a reality that didn't match his script. That was his fatal flaw, not ignorance, but entitlement. He never believed someone he dismissed as insignificant could build a trap big enough to hold him. The ballroom doors burst open. 6 IRS criminal investigation agents swept down the center aisle, their windbreakers stark against the tuxedos. "Richard Mercer," the lead agent ordered. "Step away from the podium." Richard clutched the microphone. "Do you know who I am? This is a mistake. This is my foundation." "We know exactly who you are," the agent replied. "You're the sole trustee who just signed an affidavit accepting full legal liability for 20 years of unreported offshore accounts and wire fraud. Get your hands behind your back." Richard spun toward me, his face contorting into a mask of pure rage. "She tricked me. My daughter, she's lying." "Save it for the grand jury," the agent said. Handcuffs snapped shut. The sound was metallic and final. Cameras flashed as he was led away, stripped of his grandeur, reduced to a man in a rented tuxedo. I thought it was over, but as the crowd descended into chaos, the VIP suite door slammed. I turned to see Hunter. He was sweating, his face a bruised shade of purple, clutching a serrated steak knife from a nearby catering tray. "You ruined everything," he hissed, lunging toward me. "That was our money. That was our life." "It was never yours, Hunter," I said. "It was a lie built on Grandpa's back." He swung the knife, but Luke was already there. My husband caught Hunter's wrist, twisted it with the clinical efficiency of someone who had studied leverage, and I heard the sickening snap of the bone. The knife skidded across the marble floor. When the agents forced the door open, my brother was sobbing on the floor, not from the pain of his wrist, but from the sudden, crushing weight of his own irrelevance. That was 3 weeks ago. This morning, the air in Newport smells like salt and fresh coffee. I am sitting on the porch of the cottage, my cottage. I fixed the roof, cleared the choking ivy from the windows, and made it a home. Richard was denied bail, his assets were frozen, and his empire is currently being liquidated by the feds to pay back the millions he stole. Hunter took a plea deal. There is no inheritance waiting for him, only hard labor and the reality of a life he never worked for. I sat on the porch and burned the original affidavit. I don't need it anymore. The IRS and the DOJ have everything they need. This paper was just the last remnant of the fear I used to carry. Luke sits beside me, handing me a mug of tea. "The trust transfer is complete," he says. 12,400,000. It's all in your name now. What do you want to do with it? I look out at the Atlantic Ocean, watching the waves crash against the rocks, constant, powerful, and indifferent to the ego of men. Nothing, I say. Let it grow. I'm still a nurse. I'm still Alyssa. The money isn't power, it's protection. I've learned that family isn't blood. It's the people who stand with you when the vault doors open.